We're live. This is Gen XYZ. We're from Zengag, and we started this series a couple of weeks ago to talk about the different perspectives in the workplace among three generations. So I'm Pete. I am, of course, the Gen Xer in the crowd.
And I'm Peter. I'm the Gen Y, the millennial.
Way to cut me off, millennial.
Yeah.
I'm Ashley, and I'm
order.
Gen Z.
We did it again. The entitled millennial does whatever he wants, whenever he wants. I guess we're getting used to that, huh, Ashley?
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of getting a little too much, so settle down there, okay?
All right.
But we are who we are, and I think that really is what the purpose of this is really all about, for us to figure out how to get along, how to work together, and share our unique perspectives, and realize that they all exist for a reason. And of course, a lot of my view comes from being old school, which sounds crazy to me, because I think that's supposed to be reserved for someone a whole lot older than me. But I guess that's the role that I now have to play. And I realize as time goes on, a lot of my perspectives are dated. Although today's topic is a little bit different, where my perspective may be unique in this, or different than what you guys would expect, because we're talking about how important college is today, and in the future for young people coming out of school who have to weigh the pros and cons. So that's the topic on today. So, Ashley, what do you think I'm gonna say about it? Because you have no idea.
Okay, so I graduated in 2021, and unfortunately, I graduated in a really rough time, which was COVID. COVID hit my junior year, 2020, and it changed my overall perspective. I basically taught myself everything online. It wasn't your basic lectures. It was really, really different then. And I couldn't just ask my teacher like a question like I would in person. I would have to go and figure it out, either watching a YouTube video or Googling or researching. So I feel like I learned more. Um, but I feel like the amount of money I paid for those, 2 years, and I didn't go to school like in person, it kind of wasn't worth it in my opinion. What do you think, Peter?
What do you think Pete's opinion is going to be on it? Since you're I guess they're the ADD Gen Z who didn't pay attention to the actual question.
I know it was just like just complete disregard. I think that that maybe that's a trait of the Gen Z, is millennials do whatever they want. Gen Z is just going to understand what's needed and then or ask and then just ignore it anyway. So
I see. I can't be the person to answer that, because I already know Pete's opinion on this, just because I've had conversations with him about it. And I mean, I know that he's going to, he has not the typical view that a lot of, I say older people, have, whereas, go to school, get your degree, get a job type of thing, where being more open-minded, which I don't, and I think I see people in Gen X who are a little bit more open at. Boomers, definitely. My parents' generation, it was always like, go to college and then you can do whatever you want, type of thing. Like, get your degree and then you can go decide what you want to do, which I think is kind of a little bit backwards, just because,
So let's start there. Do you think it has the same meaning that it did 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 20 years ago? And of course, my perspective is going to be different because I've been in the workforce a whole lot longer. And when I was in high school, that was, and a lot of it is socioeconomic, where you grow up, what your household perspective is or was. So there's so many factors that go into it, but really from society as a whole, I think a college degree had a certain baseline that it offered for anyone who had one. And so, there were doors that were closed to you unless you had a degree. And certainly that exists today in a lot of areas, but I don't think it is as much of a given for a lot of jobs as it used to be. And certainly not for a lot of companies who hire. We know that from experience being in staffing. Whether someone has a degree is considerably less important than what skills they bring to the table, what their experience is. Now, you could make the case, and rightfully so, that you couldn't have certain levels of experience without a degree. But I don't think that is as important to employers as it used to be.
Once you get some experience, I feel like it matters less. Degrees matter more early in your career to get your foot in the door. Once you've got your foot in the door, experience will substitute for a degree almost always, I would say, with the exception of obviously specialized careers where you have to have a certain degree for it. I'm curious, Pete, did you have a lot of people like growing up? Did you know a lot of like people who they all had their degree? Like it was just like an expected thing that everybody would have it? Because I know for my generation, everyone I know has a degree. Everyone has a bachelor's degree. It really doesn't set you apart because it's basically an extension of high school. Like everybody went to high school. Everybody has a degree.
Yeah, I think when I was in high school, and granted, so much of it would be determined by where you went to high school, right? Did you go to a super affluent high school? Were you in school in a private school, right? That maybe where the rate of college was super high. I went to a big public high school. It was probably split down the middle, and I would say it was maybe just like you said, 50-50. A lot of people had aspirations to go to college and plans to do it, and others I don't think ever considered it. And I don't know what the statistics are on that. Do you guys know what percentage of high school students go on to college today?
I don't know the percentage exactly. I do know from reading, I read a couple articles just because I know we were going to be talking about this. And so millennials are the most educated generation ever, formally educated. And they are also make significantly less money than previous generations. So the rate of return on getting education has not translated to them being also the most, economically stable generation.
So is there a correlation there, or is it just coincidence?
I think it's economics. If everybody has a degree, then doesn't set you apart. So I think that coupled with we came of age during that 2008 housing crisis, all that. So I think it's a lot of things together. But I think that millennials, just for people I know and just from reading things, like we went to college, we did what we were supposed to do, and it didn't really pay off to making more money. In a lot of cases, it actually put people in debt, and which hindered them. And I see a lot of people that are even the ones that did go back to school that are unhappy with it, and they're like, what, I'd rather work with my hands, or go back to trade school or something like that, where they just don't find it being satisfied, and they only kind of went because their parents told them to do it.
And
Okay,
that's
so
why
sorry, go ahead, Ashley.
I feel like Gen Z, a lot of the people in my generation, you see a lot of them are going to trade school, or they're going to like a 2-year online school to get like a certification. I feel like a lot of us don't feel so inclined to have to go to college as the millennials did.
Yeah, there are so many options right now, and like you said, it doesn't have to be a 4-year degree. There's certification programs that are widely available that can teach you so many different vocations, trades, if that's a route you want to go. And there's a huge need for that. I don't. So my perspective on this, my take is that college shouldn't be a given. Even for students who are eligible, even for students who may not even need to stretch themselves financially to go, I don't think it should be a given as a path that you need to go down to explore professional options. So that is a thought process certainly evolved for me over the years. And I have a lot of examples of people who did not go to college who are more successful as a result because they hit the ground running with their career. They knew what they wanted to do. And I think college is wasted on young people a lot, right? I mean, myself included. I would get much more out of it now than I did when I was young, and I would pursue a different path. I mean, did you get the most out of that experience? You both went to college right out of high school.
No. I got the most. That's a short answer. No. I got the most out of my later years in college when I was like more mature. So my gen eds and all, basically everything up until I change my major. So I went to college for 5 years instead of 4. But I got more out of those last 2 years than the prior 3 years. And even so, like then, going back and doing like additional classes and stuff, like I feel like right now, if I was like, because if I went back, I would know what I want to do and I would put a lot more effort into it. And that's been the case with a lot of people. Even so, I'll use my brother as an example. He's if he watches this, he'll know what I'm gonna say. He went and lived abroad out of school. He worked. He was an EMT. He did a bunch of different stuff. Lived abroad in Poland. Moved back here and decided that he really enjoyed, forestry and ecology and all that. And he is now going back to school. I mean, he's still relatively young. He's 25, but he decided that that's what he wants to do. So now for the first time, he's going to college, and I know he's getting a lot more out of it than he would have if he had gone right at 18. So
I feel like I did get like a lot, but it depends. So with the classes that were actually for my major, yes. But sometimes they make you take these crazy electives, and I feel like those honestly are a waste of time unless, you want them as a hobby or something. But they had one that was like a Bruce Springsteen class or a comic book class or like something like that along those lines. And I feel like that had nothing to do with like your major. Like you could be a health science major and then they're making you take like some, creative elective. Why should you feel like forced to take a creative elective if you should be focusing on your health studies? And some people do enjoy the opportunity to be taking those creative classes, but some people are just like, man, like I gotta study, I got tests to take, I don't want to have to worry about an art project or something else. So I feel like I don't think that's worth it, in
So
my
one
opinion.
of the classes I had to take my last semester to graduate was it was just filling in electives, and it didn't really matter what they
Mm-hmm.
were. But I took a sports officiating class, which I guess you could argue it helped me later in life once I started coaching my kids in sports. But it was a waste of time. It was a waste of money. It served no purpose for me professionally. It was just checking a box in an antiquated system, and we see that in high school. And that's really what's changed my thinking a lot with this is watching my kids go through high school. I have my 4, one's already graduated from college, one's currently in college, and I have 2 in high school. And so watching their friends, and as well as my 4, they all have different levels of intelligence. They have different interests. They have different aptitude um, that varies greatly, but yet they sort of get pigeonholed, not pigeonholed, but sort of funneled into almost a one size fits all approach. And granted, in high school, there's different levels of classes you can take, but everyone still has to take a lot of just the basic stuff, which seems so unnecessary today. And the education system hasn't evolved, even though everything around us has.
Well, it's the one thing I will say for that is, I guess if you look at education in terms of two different, it can be purely vocational to get you prepared for a specific job or for a specific career path. Or if you look at it as more of a teaching people how to critically think and how to like be, just learn in general, which that's the benefit of, I think, some of the more liberal arts degrees. And I know that's like the thing to like kind of bash on those, but I've talked to lots of people who have degrees and they graduated, and I'm like, how did you graduate with, because you apparently know how to do one specific thing, but anything outside of that silo, it's like you cannot function. And I think, my degree is a little bit more rounded, and I think that I benefited from that in professionally because I'm able to solve problems and think critically, which it might not be the case in all careers, but I think that that's something that is neglected a little bit. I don't know necessarily that has to be that that's what the gen eds are for and all that. I know that's the stated objective, but I think that that's something that should be taken into account. So I just wanted to put that out there, just because I don't want to make it sound like I'm super against that whole type of learning.
I
I
mean,
think people should just decide that for themselves, maybe.
you also have a point. It does, I feel like if people maybe like in high school and their freshman year of college or sophomore year of college, having electives might be a good thing because they can figure out like, oh, I like this, I don't like this. It might inspire you to pursue a certain, subject. So by the time you're junior or senior year, you should, have an idea of what you're interested in. And I feel like that's when maybe electives shouldn't come
Well, it
into
could also
play.
be. I mean, it's the teacher really depend. Like
Yeah.
you could have the most dumb class, but if you've got a really good teacher who can make interesting assignments and challenge you to learn, then that goes a long way. So maybe it's more just having good professors.
That's an unfortunate thing, though, where you're having to roll the dice. I agree with you that a great teacher can make a boring subject interesting, or at least improve it a lot. But I don't. I mean, that's a flawed system to me,
Yeah.
where you take classes to decide whether you are interested in a subject. If I had if I had authority over this, which clearly I don't, I would want every student who graduated from high school to go out in the world for a year and work. Ideally, they'd perform civil service, and I think our country would be a whole lot better because of that. Teach what a real 40-hour work week is like. Feel like that responsibility of a job full time with expectations that are put on you, and you have accountability and responsibility that you learn that a lot of college students struggle with, and a lot don't. I mean, there's many who don't, but that year, and Peter, like you described your brother's experience, he's so much better off by waiting, because he's had life experiences and gained knowledge. And I don't think you can gain that in a classroom, just because you're interested in exploring a certain area. I think that seems really flawed. And one of my, maybe actually both of my kids who've gone to college, I think started off not declaring a major right away. I think they call it exploratory studies or something like that, at Florida State, where they went. And I don't think there was much exploring going on. I didn't get that impression. They may have liked the classes and learned while in them, but it wasn't like they had some epiphany or breakthrough as a result of taking generic classes.
Well, you think about like the stuff they were exploring. It's not like they were like, try a little bit of computer science, try a little bit of engineering, try a little bit of healthcare, like things like that, where you're like really like kind of getting an idea. In my brother's example, he worked in like a more of office setting, and he's worked in hands-on. He was like, hey, I can't work in an office. He's like, I will never be that kind of guy. I want to work with my hands. And that's where he's like, I like being outside. I want to do this, scientific type stuff. That goes a long way, because you really, in theory, you're like, yes, working in an office and sitting at a computer all day sounds great. But some people, they go stir crazy and they're like, no, I got to get outside. So without you actually experiencing that, I don't think that there is a way for you to really truly get it until you've done it for, like you said, for a little while. I would even say longer than maybe a year, maybe 2 years.
And that's why I think also like internships are a really good idea, because let's just say in the beginning, I changed my major 3 times. I wanted to be a radiologist. I interned at a hospital in the radiology department, shadowed. I hated it. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And because I got that little bit of experience, that then made me, push myself to try something else. But imagine if I stuck through that major, if I never did that internship, I would have graduated and be like, wow, I don't like this job. And I just wasted 4 years. So,
well, you see the people who, it's a little bit of a stereotype, but it's like, the people who go back to school, like the old students, like they're always like the ones who are like overachievers, and because they chose to be there, they want to do it. So I think that's probably beneficial. People, who, I know it's really popular, it's becoming more popular, like people going to work at a company and then getting like reimbursed to go to school and like get their degree like on the job, like that. I feel like is probably a better system. You know that you're interested, at least in the area, kind of what you're getting into.
my sister's a NICU nurse, and her hospital is literally paying her to go back to school. So she works for the hospital at NYU, and then NYU is literally like paying for her to become a nurse practitioner. So she's basically working and then getting that free education as well.
That's great.
So,
That's a great thing.
so
All right. So
I think that's worth it.
I looked it up. I'll let you guys guess. What percentage of high school students in the U.S. go to college right out of school?
Total amount, I'm going to say 85%.
I'm going to go a little lower. I'm going to say 60%.
Ashley's a winner, 61.8.
Oh wow, that's
Hmm.
a lot
I'm
lower than I thought.
telling you.
Fewer, right? So
Hmm.
so
I wonder if
70.
that would have been higher, like, say 10, 15 years ago.
For sure.
Yeah, I don't
Maybe.
have that in front of me, but 40% don't, right? Almost 40% don't, which I'm happy to see. And there's a lot of statistics out there that indicate college graduates make more money over their lifetime. And I think historically, I have no doubt that that's been true. But I wonder if that gap is going to close. For a lot of reasons. But do you think that today for high school students graduating that number that wage gap will exist throughout their career, or do you agree with me that it'll close?
I think that if we look at education from a traditional 4-year degree, I don't necessarily think that it's going to be there, because I think that if you include vocational schools, it's like a known fact that it's going to become more and more like in demand. Like the infrastructure in the U.S. needs plumbers, it needs electricians, it needs we need people who can actually do those things with their hands. I mean, a lot of my family are blue collar workers, but particularly welders. A lot of them are welders, and they make good money, and they have never had trouble finding a job. And one of them actually worked as a welder for a while, and then went back to school and was like, "I'm going to get my business degree because I want to open up my own shop." So,
If you think about it too, with student loans, sometimes people are paying so much of their student loans, their paychecks are basically nothing. And then these people that are going to vocational school and aren't in student debt, they're saving and technically earning more money because they don't have to pay loans.
yeah, you start making money right off the bat. Off the
Mm-hmm.
bat when you're an apprentice.
Yep.
Believe. Don't quote me on that, but regardless, they start making a lot very quickly.
Well, a lot of people right now, Ashley, you touch on this, so let's talk about it briefly. Think college should be free. Now we know it's not really free. It would be paid by the U.S. taxpayers. This happens in some other countries. What's your take on that? And of course, there's been a lot of talk lately about debt forgiveness as well for college debt. People feel very strongly about that one way or the other. I think generally, depending on your own experience, you'll have one opinion or another on it. But what do you think? Should it be free like we are for K through 12?
I mean, I don't think it should be free just because you have to pay for the, facility, you have to pay for books, you have to pay for, like, let's say if you're in chemistry, you have to pay for all those, materials. But I don't think it should be as overpriced as it is right now, to the point where you're going to end up paying student loans till you're like 50, 60 years old. And as for like the loan forgiveness, again, maybe like for me, example, I missed 2 years of being in person. I did not use the school at all. I just had my computer and like all the materials I had to buy myself. I think I should be forgiven like the last 2 years, and then again have the cost of tuition lower itself, so that way, you know, when people are paying back their dues, it's not as much and they're not paying it for that like amount of time, like so long. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, I think that, there's always going to be private universities that you can pay to go to. I do think there should be some sort of subsidization there, where we just reallocate budget to that, because I think that I don't think it's like even debatable that education is skyrocketed. The price of it is insanely high, even for supposedly public universities. And it puts a pressure on the universities to act more like a business, which I don't think that a university or educational system should be. Their goal is to produce graduates who are smart and trained and have taken these classes, not just to like be degree mills. And I think that by acting in a more business aspect, it cheapens it a little bit, because you produce candidates or students, graduates that are not at as high of a level. And it also forces people to, I think, quickly find a major that might not actually benefit them down the road. And maybe that's the whole culture we have of, going to school right at 18, graduating at, 22 or whatever, and getting a job. I think that it would relieve some of that pressure, and people might be more inclined to, work a little bit. And then if they know that they can go to school and it's not going to be, as much of a financial burden on them, I think that would be good.
And
So
another thing, I feel like sorry, I could go on a debate about this, but I feel like if people are paying all this money, at least have good professors. There are some professors that are there that don't help you and they are just in it for the money, in my opinion. Like there was this one professor that I had, I'd go like for tutoring almost every week, almost every day because I was struggling and I would ask him for help and like he just wouldn't like help me. Like he just was not that kind of professor. He was like, if I know this, you should know this kind of professor. And I'm like, I'm paying all this money and I'm failing your class because you're not a good professor. So it's like,
I think that's good education. Teaching somebody is its own skill. And just if I went to school to be a professor or whatever, I'm learning very much that skill. I didn't necessarily learn how to teach people. I didn't necessarily learn how to translate my knowledge to others. And I think that's kind of that's where you get the like hit or miss thing.
So
I don't necessarily
one of
know
you-
that people are in it for the money, because I don't think college professors make too much.
one of you mentioned private schools, and when I look at where a lot of the high school age kids who I know, they're going to very expensive schools. Even mine talked about, hey, I want to go to XYZ school that wasn't in the state that would cost 4 times as much. I always wanted asked, why, right? What do you hope to gain from that other than, very surface level things, right? Like, and I see that happening with a lot of kids. So I want to go live here because I love the campus, or I like the environment there, or just want to live somewhere else. I mean, these are very superficial reasons that have nothing to do with justifying the cost of it. And I struggle with that because I think these are bad decisions that are being made. I mean, so no one should help you financially if you can't, you're not doing this for a better reason. And I see it a lot. I see a lot of kids who want to play sports in school, and maybe their parents at some point incorrectly assume that those are going to come with scholarships that aren't offered. But I see kids going to out-of-state schools, private schools, just because they want to play sports, and someone's got to foot the bill for that. And I struggle with that. I mean, there has to be a trade-off if you want something paid for in return. Give back to society somehow, not just pursue a degree in an expensive school just because you want to.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is, if it's like, if you want to go do that, then you can pay for it. But as long as there's an option, we're in Orlando, so if you want to go to UCF and then that's significantly cheaper, you get a good education there. That's an option. Then sure, if you choose to go, move to California and go to school out there while living in Florida, being from Florida, that's going to be more expensive. And I think that's where that's a parent thing. You need to guide because they're children, when they're applying, you need to guide them towards the appropriate decision. If you're in Kansas and you want to go to school for marine biology, going to Florida does make sense, but it's a trade-off. So I think that's something that's not, that's the other side of the coin, is being,
I feel like it's also a huge thing is reputation. Like, what is the school known for? Parties, sorority life, like all that crazy stuff. And that's what gets kids to be like, I want to go out of state. I want to go have like that life that I see on Instagram. Like, they don't even think about like their major or anything else. They just want the traditional college experience, which let me tell you, in my opinion, now looking back on it, I'm like, why? Like, why did I care so much about it and not enough on focusing on my career? So,
Well, and I think most of the time it's because you haven't, not you in particular, but young people, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, they haven't had enough life experience to appreciate it. I think it's as simple as that. I mean, and same for me. When I was a kid, I didn't look far into the future. I was looking to, a week ahead, a month ahead. And there are exceptions. There are very serious 17 and 18-year-olds out there who are ready to embrace education, very formally and very seriously. And I don't even want to assign a percentage because I can only speak to the ones who I know. And most of them don't appreciate the educational opportunity to take it very seriously. And again, the example of Peter's brother, I love that. Go get some real world experience. Go struggle. Go see that life is hard. Go work for real for some extended period of time. Go do something that's not cushy, and then you'll appreciate it more. I know I did when I my first job when I was working 70 hours a week out of school. I was like, damn. And I was complaining about going to class for 15 hours. It seemed silly by comparison, and I just didn't have that perspective. And I think that's where we do things out of order to some degree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what it boils down to is it's out of order. And then, because they don't have that experience, then it does fall to the parents. Like you're a parent, you have to subsidize that experience by guiding them in the right direction. And I think that prestige and them wanting to go to a school, like that's what matters. I take a utilitarian view. Like I'm like, a school is a school as long as it's a good accredited one. Like, I'm in Florida, so I did Bright Futures. I went to community college and then I went to regular, 4-year university, and it worked out fine. I got the traditional experience. I didn't end up having to pay a bunch of money because I wanted to go to, University of Alabama or somewhere like that out of state that's going to cost me 3 times as much. I know I'm lucky in that aspect, but I think that's one of the things that needs to be taken into account. Luckily now we have a lot of remote stuff. So I think that people's views are changing. It seems like Gen Z has, differing views on that. And then like we just talked about the vocational aspect of it. So I think that people are realizing that they can have a good, solid, good life, and that there's really a lot of in-demand jobs that are going to be future-proof in areas that weren't traditionally they didn't have the baby boomers who grew up and were like, you got to go to college. At least that's what I heard my entire life. So
yeah, I think me too. And it was a given that that's the path you should be on. No one was talking about trade school, what that could offer. But now you look at the demand, where the demand is for, you mentioned it earlier, plumbers, electricians. Those professionals are in high demand. They're very few and far between. That's not going to change anytime soon. And I hope that becomes more prevalent at Zengig. We talk about that a lot, by the way. We missed a plug opportunity there earlier where we were talking about kids who want to explore what different professions do. We explain all of those in significant detail in our 500 career guides that we have on Zengig. So by job title, look it up, and you'll have a much better understanding of what to expect, what it takes to become that profession, whatever it might be, and what your career path will look like. So perfect opportunity to plug that a little bit. We're at our 30 minutes, so this has gone by super fast, you guys.
Yeah.
Ashley, final thought on what you think that, for college right now. You're the most recent grad, of course. What advice do you have to people or coming out of high school or parents of kids who are at that age?
I feel like education is worth it. Go to vocational school, go out and do internships, go and do those 2-year certifications. Don't feel so inclined to have to get that traditional college experience because it's very expensive. That's my opinion.
You need to account the cost of it all.
Peter?
Yeah, the choices. I think that's the thing, is not having that tunnel vision of this is the only way that you can have make money, because there's a lot of things out there, and you can have a really good life and succeed professionally in a lot of areas outside of just going to 4-year. And that's not, I'm not knocking 4-year degrees if that's what you want to do. If you're like, I want to be a doctor, obviously you got to go to a lot of school for that, but just know that there's other options if you're not as inclined to want to do 4 years.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would just say, look at who you are individually and make a decision. Don't follow someone else's path. look and consider your own options. This may sound silly, but I believe right now you can get a better education on YouTube in many respects than in a compressed time frame that you could by going to college for 4 years. And so there are so many alternatives that exist today. It's a shame that more people don't look at those. And again, being in the role that we're in staffing, whether you have a degree right now is for most jobs, and there's a lot of jobs that do require specialty degrees or certifications. Put that aside, a lot of companies don't care, and I think that trend is only going to continue. It's about what you can do and how you perform. That'll make a much bigger difference. So shouldn't be a given, I don't think, but I think Ashley said it well. Education is still important. It's just the type of education should be considered.
Yep.
Yep.
Thanks.
I agree.
Okay.
All right. Well, we agree again, for better or worse. So maybe
Next
find a more
time
controversial topic next time.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Well, that's it for today then. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
All right. Bye, guys.